All right, folks. Sorry for being just 3 minutes late. Not bad. We're trying to scoot across town here at the last minute to get home on a Friday, on a football weekend. Um, Welcome to Friday Night Live. Stand by. I'm having charging issues here. Okay, if my stuff could work, that'd be great. That'd be great, just like me. There we go. Okie dokie. Definitely going to need the phone serving as a hotspot to do its job tonight. All right, so we're into September 6th. It is nice weather, warm, but not too hot. Thank goodness. Humidity's down a little bit. The problem with the humidity being down is that we have gotten really dry again, like we tend to do this time of year. And we're kind of edging towards being in a little bit of a fire danger. We're starting to see burn bans issued. So we got friends coming out this weekend, but we're not going to do any fires. That's just not a good idea. Things are getting a little crispy around here where it's just grass, where I don't have things deeply mulched. So this is an opportunity to see how much good mulching does, because everything that is in planted beds with lots of leaf mulch and wood chips and things like that, they all pretty much look fine. Sometimes by the end of the day, they're looking a little bit pooped out, like they just kind of are ready to go to bed. But overall, you can really, really see a difference. The critters around here, everybody's doing fine. I don't think when I quote unquote mated the rabbits 3 weeks ago, I don't think it actually happened. I don't think they did the deed. So I need to set another rabbit date and try again. It's also possible that they just weren't fertile because it's been hot. And apparently, sometimes male rabbits will not be fertile when we are hot. Now that we're cooler, we'll try again. Not that hard. Just throw everybody in together. Maybe leave them a little bit longer. Only left them together about a day and a half last time. And I did not hover and wait for confirmation of the act to be complete, shall we say. So need to work on that pretty soon. And I'm starting to pull together the site prep for a woodshed / compost shed that we are going to build. Have some friends come up and help us build towards the end of this month. So where my pallet compost currently is, I've been harvesting out all the finished compost and rolling that in a short distance in the wheelbarrow to areas of the pasture that just need compost, because there is crap for topsoil. Actually, not even actual crap, like no topsoil. I have a feeling there might be a big rock slab right there. The topsoil just doesn't have an opportunity to get very deep. So getting that cleared, and we need to do a little bit more site prep there so that it's ready to rock and roll. And we are planning on largely constructing this kind of pole barn style with locusts that's on the property. I'm going to go out and mark and cut locusts that is a good post size, 6 or 8 inches, since we have no shortage of that around here, and frame it up with that, roof it, and I will handle the paneling and the slats and all that stuff later. I basically just need help getting it squared, post in, roof slats up, and hopefully like metal roofing attached, and then I will fill it in as we go. If I have a roof on, it can serve the purpose for what I really need it to be, even through the winter time. So that's something I can work on through the winter if need be. But just have friends help me for the stuff where 6 or 8 people are very helpful on a thing like that. I think we're looking at like 12 by 20. So like 20 long, about 12 wide is about what I have in mind. I think it's kind of going to depend on how much scrap metal roofing I can get a hold of. So if we have a little bit more, I've got a buddy who has access to a waste stream. If we can get a little bit more, then I might go a little bit longer, because I can certainly go longer out there, or possibly even a little bit wider. So compared to the size of the shop is 32 by 14. So if I did even like 14 by 16, that'd be great too. Very, very doable. Let me take a second to say hi to the crew in the live stream here. Digger has popped in. Thank you, Digger. Good to see you. And Pippinize is here. Happy Friday, everybody. Sheep are in good order. Donkeys in good order. I'm up another paddock today. I'll move them in the morning before I go to jiu-jitsu. And we are getting ready for our open house. And Margot popped in. Margot put a reminder in her calendar. I have to put one in mine too. I do, or I could forget. We are going to have our open house on the 8th. That's Sunday from noon till 4ish. If you're in the Knoxville area and you would like to come by, give me a holler. strongrootsresources@gmail.com, and I'll get you the directions. It's just kind of a general homestead hangout, off-grid folks, people who are interested in all this stuff that we do, permaculture stuff, you name it, freedom stuff, all of those things. A little bit of a swap meet, a little bit of a, kind of taking people on a tour, a little demonstration site, that kind of thing, and then mostly just enjoying some refreshments and networking for the last couple of hours is how that all tends to work out. And I've got about 10 people RSVP'd, and about 8 of them are all new people who have found me through the show, found me on podcasts, found my posts, wherever, and want to come out and check it out. So that's great. Always glad to extend the size of the community a little bit. All right. I don't think I have too many other announcements other than the open house. There are some events that we're starting to get closer to that I'm kind of putting my poop in a group for. Self-Reliance Festival is coming up. That is the first weekend in October. And a couple of days prior to that, there's going to be a GSD, Get Shit Done Day, at Delinquents Gully, Tollman Tim's property. I will be out there for at least one of those work days, probably the Friday, right before SRF, which is on Saturday and Sunday, for some tree and shrub planting. So I'm working on planting or obtaining the plants and putting together the planting plan for that. So I'll be leading that. I'm sure we will also do a foraging walk out there. I'm going to see if I can do the Thursday as well. That's just one of the things I kind of need to wait until about a week before so I can see what's kind of in the immediate future, family-wise, animal-wise, and all that good stuff. So there's that. And then the third weekend in October is probably just a Saturday. And that's going to be in Centerville, Tennessee, which is kind of just a little bit west of Middle Tennessee, and really not too far from Camden. And I'm going, and more pertinent and closer to today on September 14th. So I guess that is next. I'm going to be tabling at the CHIO Health Fair. That is a kind of alternative health collaboration. So it'll be a health fair for all kinds of vendors, all kinds of people who are everything alternative to allopathic medicine here in the Knoxville area. So if you're in the Knoxville area and you want more options and explore more options and actually have an opportunity to speak to these practitioners, chionox.org is the website. It looks like there's going to be about 20 or 25 different vendors there. So I will be there, and also along with a number of other people who are kind of part of my network. So that CHIO is how I found my direct primary care physician and fired the one who was no longer a good fit for me. I didn't fire him. I just left his practice, and then he retired, so it worked out. Found the gentleman who is my chiropractor, and an alternative nutritionist, and a massage therapist. I know people who do biofeedback, so all that kind of stuff. So if you're even within probably a couple of hours of Knoxville, this would be worth your time. So that's chionox.org. I don't know why my keyboard or chat is being so dang slow, but there it is. Off Grid Ping has popped in. Good to see you, sir. I'll be seeing you before too long out there for the work day at Tim's. Be good to see you and the youngin and the dog. Um, so yeah, there's catch up. That's what I got. That's what I got on the to do list there. And actually, what I want to talk about tonight, I want to talk about birds. I want to talk about birds because I think birds in your landscape, and I'm not talking about chickens or turkeys or quail or anything like that. I'm talking about wild birds. Um, they have a more significant role than many of us realize. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how important their role and their impact is, and how you can have more of them and enjoy the benefits of birds on any size property, bigger, smaller, really doesn't matter. And I started noticing this as soon as I started planting trees in the front yard back at the urban homestead. So back in '09, is that when we bought that place? Maybe it was '08. I think it was '08. I think it was right before that housing crash. We got lucky. We were smart. We didn't get a mortgage that went underwater on us. So um, our little 1/5 acre urban homestead in North Knoxville had in the front yard nothing. I think it had a water maple that was sick and ended up coming down. Had no trees, had no flowers, had no. I think there were like crappy little boxwoods right up against the porch, and that was about it. And there was a little more in the backyard. There was a pecan tree. There was some mulberry. There was sort of a light kind of line of brushy stuff between us and the neighbor to the west. But we never really had any birds out there that first year or so before I really started working on the landscaping. You would occasionally see, your super adaptable mockingbird, but nothing much until I started planting stuff. So within those first couple of years, I had planted about 6 fruit trees in the front yard, some hazelnut, some butterfly bush, lilac. I can't think of the other one right off the top of my head. I mean, I can see it. Crepe myrtle, because Angel wanted a crepe myrtle. And we basically just started filling up the front landscape with trees and shrubs, flowers, all the above. And I only had one little bird feeder out there. I just, I had one little that I had it sitting on a stump. And because I knew I wanted birds around just because I like birds, and they, birds deserve to have a place they feel good hanging out too. And it wasn't really until I realized that the more birds we had, the fewer mosquitoes we had, the fewer garden pests, your squash bugs, all that kind of stuff, stink bugs, things like that. All of that was drastically reduced. And plus, it was one of our favorite things to do, was to sit on the front porch with our coffee in the morning and watch the birds like old people. It's a great activity. It's wonderful. So when we came out here in 2020, the idea was to like the same but more and better. So one of the first areas I planted was our front, what I kind of call the pollinator beds, but it's all sorts of things. There's food in there. There's herbs in there. There's pollinator plants. There's plants for the butterflies. There's just, and plenty of cover and food sources for birds. And birds, they really just want the basics. They need a sustainable food source. So that's helpful if there are things that bloom and go to seed through a kind of a long span of time through the growing season. And they want some cover. They like to have places to perch where they have like some overhead cover from predator birds. And, some of your birds like wrens, they actually like to be down on the ground sometimes. So they like some ground cover. And they enjoy, water's nice. And we have ponds nearby so they can drink. And it was the fact that I was observing the birds that it's one of the reasons why I named it Bluebird Hill. So the story behind that was this would have been, I guess, the second winter here. So the first winter I was either staying here in the shop while we were waiting on the cabin to be delivered in the spring, or we were staying down at mom and dad's. But it was wintertime, so I wasn't in a good mood. I was ready for it to be over. It was like February. And I did have this little, well, not so little, but a livestock tank that had water in it. And I had like laid in a bunch of sticks and branches kind of across. And I'd had various aquaponics systems going in it. But at that time of year, it was pretty much dormant. But I was just sitting there one day. It was a cold day, but it was sunny. And all of these bluebirds came in, and cedar waxwings, just everywhere. And we always have a lot of bluebirds up here. They're pretty much here year round, although we seem to have more of them in the wintertime, just dozens and dozens. And so I'm pretty sure I set the picture for tonight's live stream is from that, is those birds hanging out. And it was one of those moments where I was just kind of in a funk, but it made me so happy. And it just kind of reminded me, like, those birds are having a great day. They don't care that it's wintertime. So I was like, okay, more birds. So over time, as I have added these gardens, I have added all these different layers, all these different food sources, things like coneflower that holds onto its seeds. And I clip off 3 or 4 heads to save the seed, but I leave the rest for the birds, because especially the goldfinches love that seed. It's one of their favorite foods. So just off the top of my head, I just wrote this down real quick this morning when Angel and I were sitting out front, and we saw downy woodpecker, pileated woodpecker, bluebirds, waxwings, house wrens, blue jays, robins, goldfinch, catbird, always crows, always lots of, all of our predator birds, hawks, owls. I think we even have a golden eagle around here. All kinds of birds. And I'm sure there's so many more that I just didn't even think to notate. So here's where the benefits come in. We've got the bug patrol. I hardly ever see like hornworms, because I'm sure the birds get into the garden and chow down. We never really had squash bugs out here. Don't really see a lot of beetles, Japanese beetles. We had like the usual June bug emergence in July, but they're only around for a couple weeks and then they're gone again. And they don't damage crops or anything. And one of my very favorite things about, so I'm kind of specifically referring to the songbirds now. So our little songbirds, bluebirds and such, they are so territorial that they will actually run off the bigger birds, like the starlings, the grackles, and the cowbirds. And those 3 birds those are the ones that get into your fruit trees and get into your berry bushes. They're the ones that kind of raid your garden. They're the ones that get in there and they pluck out your corn seeds, your peas, your beans. They can be really hard on gardens. But these little birds they kind of got an attitude, and they'll gang up and they will just harass the bigger birds. So those bigger birds just go somewhere else. They just find somewhere else with a feeder. So these days we don't set out feeders, and sometimes I will set out a little bit of suet in the wintertime, but we don't set out bird seed anywhere. I think that could actually upset the balance if we were to do that. We provide food sources for them by growing things. So that's a huge plus. So whenever I do food forest design or even just raised bed gardens, I encourage people, like, build perimeters of all these kind of plants, like your coneflower, like your black-eyed Susan, mint plants, the rose of Sharon, just all kinds of things like that the birds enjoy, so that you have those songbirds out there ready to defend their territory. And you're not going to have this emergence of I don't ever see starlings around here. Like, they may drop in, they kind of drop in at the hops field from time to time, but they're never there very long. And I just don't have bird damage. The other aspect of having songbirds, it's kind of neat that we never really expected, and we didn't really experience this in the city, is they tell us when the snakes are around. Now, we don't really mind having the snakes for the most part either, although I did have to evict that one a couple of months back for breaking the rules. But it is nice to not accidentally step on a snake when we're moving around the yard. And we have noticed that the wrens and the mockingbirds will call out a very particular, we've learned to associate it. It means snake. I'm pretty sure it's the bird word for, hey, there's a snake up here. Now, they don't like the snake because the snake, of course, will raid and eat the eggs out of their nest. So those mockingbirds especially will harass the heck out of a snake. And one day, true story, there was a I think it was a mockingbird, just making this giant fuss, and it kept flying and swooping and flying and swooping. And you guys know, like they'll bomb a cat or a dog or anything they think. They're so protective about their nest. And Angel was actually kind of talking to the bird like we do around here. And she's like, "Well, what are you looking at?" And she said the bird flew and then just like hovered just a couple of feet off the ground, and it was saying, "There's a snake down here," and showed her exactly where that snake was. And I guess Angel went and kind of shooed the snake away. So they're really smart. I mean, they're just really, really good companions and partners out here. Another aspect, especially if you're keeping livestock, especially ruminants where flies can be a problem. Barn swallows. It's an old school thing for farmers to provide habitat in their barns, nesting areas, all that kind of stuff, and work really hard to not exterminate barn swallows because they will control the fly population. And so those are the birds that you will see sitting on the behind of a cow, sitting there catching flies. And for like young calves, fly strike is a real issue. Lambs too, this can be an issue. If an animal gets a wound, the flies will just converge on it, and it can get real gross real quick. So your barn swallows and birds of that type are really useful and really motivated to go after those flies. So make sure they have the things that a bird's going to want. Water nearby, cover, areas to land and rest, extra food sources, all that sort of stuff. Those birds are partners and they're useful. And the whole thing about barn swallows and the flies, I learned this from Alex Miller over at Lick Skillet Farm in Newmarket when we were doing a farm tour out there. He was describing how the barn swallows, once they had more of them out there, and they get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, and we're talking about people who raise lots and lots and lots of cattle, so they have a big calving season. They were having issues with flies causing blindness in the calves. Obviously could be a real problem. So once they had more barn swallows, that seemed to considerably be reduced. So flies are pretty gross. I know they serve a purpose overall, but they can be a vector for disease. They can really aggravate wounds. Of course, they lay eggs. That turns into maggots. That's gross. So we have some barn swallows out here, not as many as I would like. So I'm looking at what it takes to encourage more, because Prim has trouble with flies. And right now my method has been to set out lots and lots of the really stinky fly attractant traps. And that has most certainly helped, and we'll continue doing that. But I want more barn swallows out there for that very reason. The other thing that the songbirds and birds like mockingbirds are really useful for is they will, for better or for worse, pick fights with the predator birds. So it is not unusual because the predator bird will raid their nests as well. And you'll see, I've watched this more than once, 100 feet up in the air, this mockingbird just bombing like a red-tailed hawk over and over and over, and annoying the hell out of that hawk, no doubt. And every now and again, I find a big burst of, mockingbird feathers, because that's about the equivalent of 145-pound me picking a fight with somebody who's 205. But they are so territorial and protective of their nests, their activity kind of alerts everybody else down on the ground, hey, there's predator bird up here. And crows are really good for that too. So crows are highly intelligent, very territorial and protective, and they have a very interesting means of communication. and they will. It's the same thing. They will just absolutely annoy the dickens out of the predator birds. So we call it crow fuss. So if we hear the crows going off, that means there's a predator bird around, or maybe even a fox or a coyote or something like that. They'll alert to all of that stuff, and that just kind of lets me know by paying attention to what nature is saying. There's something around that could be causing a problem, which is useful if you are free ranging chickens or something like that, which we can't get away with around here anymore. But it's just good to know. And have you guys ever been out, in the field or out just in nature or hunting or camping, and suddenly all the birds go quiet, and it's like the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and that's pretty, it's a real kind of creepy feeling. Um, Lots of sudden silence is very useful, and I've been around that plenty of times, and it's usually been when like a coyote or a fox is going to come through. But if you're in bear country, same thing. They'll get quiet if you are in areas where wolves are getting reestablished, or just anything kind of unusual. They are very wise and very attentive about that kind of thing. Double check my notes here. So not birds, obviously, but they fly. So we'll count them for that. But bats. Bats are the best. And we have bats out here, and I'm so glad we have bats, because you know what we don't have very many of? We just don't have very many mosquitoes. When we were in the city, we were in kind of a low-lying spot where actually we were in the lowest spot on the street, which we found out the hard way when it flooded really bad. And, we had alleyways, and there were junky places around. So there was a lot of water. There was a lot of standing water that collected. And I had a habit of going up and down my alleyway and just dumping out water anywhere that it was collecting. Old tires, stuff that wasn't getting picked up by the city. There was even a point where if it was just like junk that had been there for years. And I'm talking about in the alleyway, not in people's yards. Couldn't do much about that. But anywhere where I could like legally access, I was just dumping water. Or sometimes maybe even drilling holes to allow water to drain from like an ancient, abandoned, rusted out wheelbarrow or something like that. So, and it still didn't really solve the problem. And there were times that the mosquitoes were really, really like just clouds and clouds of them. And every now and then I would see a couple of bats, and I was like, and I knew bats eat thousands of mosquitoes a night. And I just thought, man, what do I need to get more bats? So I looked into building bat boxes, and Angel built one, and we mounted one in the best place that we possibly could, which was probably not ideal. And I am pretty sure it took a couple of years, but after a couple of years, we were seeing bats coming in and out of it. So when I do property design, or when I'm discussing this kind of thing with people and they ask about mosquitoes, about spraying for them, which of course is an option, but maybe not the best option, I tell them, like, put up bat houses. You can buy them, you can build them. They're not very hard to build. You do need to follow specific instructions because bats have their reasons for doing things the way they do. But bats will nest in hollows of trees. So if there are trees around that are dying, but aren't necessarily posing a threat to a structure or anything, leave them. It's supporting woodpeckers, it's supporting bats, supporting all kinds of stuff. So, putting up bat houses, thinking about what kind of infrastructure bats need, just kind of researching that a little bit and helping provide those needs. More bats, fewer mosquitoes, fewer chances of mosquito-borne illness. I guess there's a couple of new ones going around in the area. Allegedly, I haven't really looked too deeply into it, but a couple of people have mentioned that to me. And they're just annoying, and who wants that? So, so encourage your bats, encourage your flying rats to hang out, and it's they come out here at dusk. They mostly kind of fly on the south side of the cabin, so they come out of that wood line there, and we'll just sit back there and just watch them, swoop and feed, and it's pretty neat to watch those guys fly around. And these are the little ones. I mean, they're only maybe not even 8 inches wingspan. They're just little guys, but it looks like they get a lot of good chow in the night. And there's really not any evidence. Like bats don't attack people, they don't bite, and they don't even really carry rabies. All that's kind of a not entirely inaccurate, but kind of a giant overblown urban legend. So encourage your bats. I mean, they're scared of humans. They don't want to be around us. They just kind of want to do their thing. They've received a lot of undue, unearned bad press. So that's my spiel on encouraging birds plus bats. You just don't hear this get mentioned a whole lot in kind of the permaculture space. And we got to remember that our first principle is to observe and interact. And I know we spend a lot of time looking at what we do have, but within that observe and interact portion, let's also think about what we should have, what should be there, what we should have more of or could have more of to help solve problems. Just always go back and ask, how would nature solve this problem? Or how would nature work to bring this into balance? Because oftentimes the answer is plant more stuff so you have more critters filling in that role. And it doesn't take very long. I mean, when we moved here, we had we would see the waxwings and we would see the bluebirds, and we would see kind of your typical robins and I'm having a brain fart here. Your mockingbirds and your blue jays, those guys, kind of your like really urban and suburban adapted birds. But as soon as we had more trees, we had more songbirds. We had more of those bluebirds. We had more of those waxwings. So, hey, Mary James, I've got a question from her. But won't the bats eat fruit from your trees? I've never seen this happen. So, of course, you guys have been out here. You see where our food forest is. I don't think they do that. I think bats are omnivorous. So they will eat a lot of things, but I've just never seen it. And I'm going, and I guess it kind of, I would say it depends. Now, knowing where you guys are, I feel, number one, like, do you guys see bats out there? Because you probably should. Like I can imagine there's decent bat habitat out there. I'm not saying that they won't, but I don't think like it's very likely. I think because of all that woodline you guys have, they should have lots of opportunity to be able to eat what they need to eat. I know a lot of people put a lot of work into covering things and netting and all that, which can cause its own problems. So I don't see that really being an issue. I could be wrong. These things, this can be very site dependent. I kind of feel like the chances of the benefits are going to outweigh potential issues with bats eating fruit and things. As far as I've always observed, bats really seem to want to go after the bugs. Like they're very bug motivated. They're essentially, they're, I guess, are they considered a rodent? I guess they are. Obviously I know they're not a bird, but I think they're actually considered a rodent. So I would say observe, maybe further research. I've never seen the bats around here. I've never seen them land on anything. So when we watch, so they come out at dusk, and they're usually only out for a little while. They come out at dusk, and they kind of fly back and forth, and there's kind of like this sort of, you can tell they're kind of following like the air currents, the way the air moves around here, and they're swooping and they're grabbing bugs, they're grabbing mosquitoes, they're grabbing. I've watched them grab June bugs and the Japanese beetles and things like that. And where they emerge from there's black cherry trees back there. There's lots of honeysuckle berries, and I just don't see much evidence that they're getting into all that, which tells me maybe that's not their preferred food. But it's given me something to think about, Mary. So I will think about it further for sure. Let me put this up here from Margot. and she had a couple of nesting pairs of bluebirds in North Carolina, and they have also taken over a purple martin house in Nashville. So that's a really good point. So bluebirds like houses. They will move into whatever is available. But get on, an image search or like a diagram search and put in bluebird house, uh, uh, building instructions, because it's a little bit specific. But they're very adaptable. They will move into martin houses. That you can grow those big gourds that hollow out, and they love those. So you'll see. Just think about this: you're going through old farm country, old farmhouses, and you would see those big racks, kind of like a tall T post, and just several gourds hanging from it. That's songbird housing. And that's because farmers know that the songbirds run off the birds that wreck your garden, especially right after you seeded it. They're just so very useful. So uh, I have pondered this from time to time, but I've never really had like I could say the focus and the motivation to scale it. But building bluebird houses and putting them up for sale as part of a kind of permaculture organic gardener adjacent thing, perfectly reasonable side hustle. If you have access to a lot of 1x4s, or even better, like 1x6s, perfect lumber for that. Poplar probably could be done from pallet wood, just saying. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about maybe a wintertime side hustle and you have a dry place and 2 or 3 power tools, I bet you could rip out some pallet boards and screw together quite a few bluebird houses, or even make bluebird house kits. And there's all kinds of ways to upsell it: installations, proper placement, you name it. Football team colors, because I don't think birds care about the color of their house. And and we know this. We know this because we've watched this. When my brother established the hop yard, one of the things that he did when he set the post was build and attach a bluebird house on 20% of those posts. And of course, they've gotten pretty weathered. Some of them have come down, but pretty easy to build those and put them to work on your property. What worst case scenario, some other kind of bird moves in, but it's going to be, you only make the hole so big, so it's only going to be a little songbird in all likelihood. Some birds will peck it out and make it bigger, but your problematic birds, your starlings, your cowbirds, things like that, grackles can be a real pain in the butt for wrecking a garden. They don't live in those things. They don't care for them. Yeah, bluebird house side hustle. Paint them in the colors of the bluebird, blue with that kind of orangish bronze chest. I mean, I think that look cool as all get out. Stencil it, somebody pick that up and run with it. Throw it on Facebook Marketplace, $40 a piece. Figure out your time. Figure out whatever your create you a workflow. Like I am in Jack Spearco mode, giving you guys yet another side hustle. I might be telling myself just as much. This is one of those things where when the shed out here gets built and I get to move a bunch of stuff out of my high tunnel into that shed, so the firewood's going to the shed, maybe even a couple of tool racks, a lumber rack, that's going to give us a full work table length for building things where we have room to do it, where I can kick sawdust everywhere, not in my shop, and be in the high tunnel in the wintertime, be out of the wind, and it's because it's sort of greenhousey, we're actually going to be a little bit warmer. So who knows? We might be on a birdhouse roll come wintertime. Lord knows I got enough pallets I can rip apart to be able to have materials to work with. So yeah, guys, that's what I got for you tonight. That's that was on my brain. Think about the benefits of having birds on your land. We love it. If anything else, it gives you something to sit with your husband or wife on the porch and drink your coffee and talk about the birds and be old people, even if you're not old yet. And you can create, you can give them names. So we call all of the everything gets a nickname around here. The snake is called Sneaky. The little green snake is I'll have to ask Angel. I forgot that one. Sprout, because he's little and green. Sprout, and we call the one I cannot remember for the life of me, the black and yellow bird, not the waxwings, but the goldfinches. Good God, the goldfinches. We call them beakers because their peeping sounds just like Beaker from the Muppets. Listen to it sometime and tell me if I'm wrong on that. So you can give everybody names, and you can count them. You can tell narratives about what one bird is saying to the other bird, or when you're watching the male bring the female nesting material, and when she kicks it out and bitches at him for bringing the wrong stuff, and he has to go try again, and then he goes and he tries to build one, and she's all like ultra critical, and they have like this whole domestic dispute. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. We entertain ourselves pretty easily around here sometimes. And Mary, yes, we do have hummingbirds. And I never did put the feeders up this year because I feel like we have enough options for them. So we get 2 or 3. We don't get lots and lots, but we do see them every morning. They visit the Rose of Sharon. They visit, I think it's called blanket flower. I've got a bunch of late summer flowers coming up, and I can't even remember all the names because I just threw seed down like a crazy person in the fall. They love the Mexican sunflowers. Holy cow, guys. Get some Mexican sunflower seed. And that's almost their favorite thing. They always visit that first. They like the lilac. So yeah, the hummers are great. And if you don't, and it's okay to feed the hummers, bring them around. You don't have to add any color dye. There's just a ratio of regular sugar to water to make that nectar that they need. Don't throw any colors in it. They don't need it. They're attracted to the color reds. That's why a lot of the feeders are red. That's kind of what they hone in on. But they don't need dyed sugar water. Mary says she put out 2 more feeders and found that we have at least 5. Yeah, I know we see 3 or 4, and I think it's at least 2 different types. And I'm not real good on my hummingbird identification, but one has like that kind of shimmering green chest, and one looks almost a little more purplish. And I can't tell if it's the way the light is reflected off of its feathers, the way, because, we're looking from the porch, and we're also, we're looking through a screen. So that kind of, messes things up a little bit. But, yeah, hummingbirds are great too. And their territorial is all get out. They fight with each other more than anything. They have, I don't know if they have like gangs or what, but they will go at it out there. So yeah, the hummers are wonderful, and hummers are, they're pollinators too. So they're pollinating when they're going from flower to flower, and they like, the other thing they really like, I planted this purple hyacinth bean. And if you want a really fast growing, it's an annual vine, but if you want a really fast growing vine for screening, and the hummingbirds love the flowers, purple hyacinth bean. And the beans I don't think they're technically edible for us. I think they're just like really, really tough, but beautiful vine, beautiful flowers, and foliage and everything. And it sets a ton of seeds. So once you have a couple of seeds, you'll have plenty forever. I'm sure I'll have the ability to speak. I'm sure I will have some seed available to share with folks as I start collecting seed here as we get closer to the end of the growing season. So, hummingbird vine is popular, but it can really take off. It can become kind of problematic. So if you're going to do that, I would think about maybe trellising that separately from other things, and certainly not where it's going to climb up the side of your house. So if you maybe have like maybe a triangular trellis or a TP style or something like that, or even just like an arch, uh, hummingbird vine's great and they do love it, but don't let it get on your house and don't let it be where it's going to infiltrate other gardens. It can run a lot of rhizomes. So maybe make sure you can control the complete perimeter if you're going to plant hummingbird vine. It comes up pretty easy. It pulls out pretty easy, but it's once it's there, you'll have it forever. Just be warned on that. So yeah, y'all. Um, I think I will be wrapping it up from this point. Really appreciate you guys hanging out. Mary, if you and Bill are around this weekend, feel free to swing by the farm. We'd love to see you, and we will talk to you guys next Friday, if not before then. So everybody have a good evening. Thank you so much for hanging out, and we will talk to you later.